President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. He is more imminent.
James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations."
When men were free.
Broadcasting live from a secret location buried deep below the earth, you're about to make a connection to the signs of the times. W. Dean Shook is live on the air right now.
Welcome into End Time News. I'm your host, W. Dean Shook. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody for showing up. Welcome to our national and international audience on our regular broadcast affiliates across this country. Everyone on the iHeartRadio network, the Blog Talk Radio network, the Spreaker Radio network, and everyone that's listening online. It's your support that keeps this program on the air, and I appreciate all of you so very much. And don't forget, you can get the End Time News mobile app for your Android at Google Play, and you can get it for your iPhone at the App Store. Get your mobile app today and never miss a program of the signs of the times. It's keeping you connected. We're going to start today with kind of a disturbing story. Scientists are growing kidneys of aborted babies in animals. This is a WND exclusive that's reporting as science publications are hailing research breakthroughs in a new life-saving procedure that harvests the organs of aborted children and transplants them in animals where they can grow and then become available to patients. The Genetic Literacy Project website calls the process genotransplantation, suggests the biggest question would be, would you accept an organ from a pig or a cow or a baboon or a chimpanzee if it saved your child's life or even your own? The statistics it publishes makes a case for the need. It says more than 123,000 Americans require an organ transplant. Fewer than 30,000 will get one, leaving 21 people a day to die waiting. Now, according to them, our long-term goal is to grow human organs in animals to end the human donor shortage. But even the science publications are noting the ethical problem for each organ obtained to transplant into a rat or a pig to later help a needy adult. An unborn baby must die. Jim Sedlak, spokesman for the American Life League, the largest grassroots Catholic pro-life movement in the U.S., called the transplant program totally immoral and another outlandish use of aborted babies to produce results that humans think are good. Said we're totally opposed to any use of aborted cells for human beings to grow organs or for any other purpose, he said. Someone died in order for these organs to be grown. A video by Jan Gorin glosses over the source of the organs by calling them discarded babies. But obtaining valuable human organs requires working in concert with abortion businesses. At Medical Daily, reporter Susan Sketty said Gu told her his work is funded by family and friends, not the government. They said, we feel our research is more palatable than other researchers who use taxpayer money to fund their research involving human aborted fetus tissue, which is the vast majority of major biomedical research labs, he said. Abortionists are selling these aborted babies to harvest tissue and organs. So, folks, what are we looking at here? This is where abortionists have a twofold profit. They're paid to kill the baby, then paid to sell the murdered babies to researchers for parts. I think we all understand the greed that will promote more abortions in the name of research with a moral banner of saving someone else's life. Remember, God judged Israel for sacrificing their babies to Moloch. Do we think he won't judge us for killing our kids through abortion and then selling the parts? Think about this. Okay, according to theage.com, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Clause that everyone should be against, they're reporting the United States is in the final stages of negotiating this Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, a massive free trade agreement with Mexico, Canada, Japan, Singapore, and 7 other countries who will benefit from the TPP. The American workers, the consumers, small businesses, taxpayers, or will it be the biggest multinational corporations in the world? What do you think? Well, one strong hint is buried in the fine print of this closely guarded draft. The provision, an increasingly common feature of the trade agreement, is called Investor State Dispute Settlement, or ISDS. Now, the name may sound mild, but don't be fooled. Agreeing to the ISDS in this enormous new treaty would tilt the playing field in the United States further in favor of big multinational corporations. Worse, it undermines our sovereignty. Here's how. The ISDS would allow foreign companies to challenge U.S. laws and potentially to pick up huge payouts from the taxpayers without ever stepping foot in a U.S. court. Here's how it works. Imagine the United States bans a toxic chemical that's added to gasoline because of its consequences. If a foreign company that makes the toxic chemical opposes the law, it would normally have to challenge it in a U.S. court. But with ISDS, the company would skip the U.S. courts and go before an international panel of arbitrators. If the company won, the ruling couldn't be challenged in U.S. courts, and the arbitration panel would require American taxpayers to cough up millions and even billions of dollars in damages. Now, if that seems shocking, buckle your seatbelt. ISDS could lead to gigantic fines. But it wouldn't employ independent judges. Instead, highly paid corporate lawyers would go back and forth between representing corporations one day and sitting in the judge's seat the next day. Maybe that makes sense in an arbitration between 2 corporations, but not in cases between corporations and governments. If you're a lawyer looking to maintain a high-paying corporate clients, how likely are you to rule against those corporations when it's your turn in the judge's seat? Now, if the tilt toward giant corporations wasn't clear enough, consider how you'd get to use these special courts. Only international investors, which are, by and large, big corporations. So if you're a Vietnamese company with U.S. operations wanted to challenge an increase in the U.S. minimum wage, it could use ISDS. But if an American labor union believed Vietnam was allowing Vietnamese companies to pay slave wages in violation of their trade agreement, the union would have to make its case to the Vietnamese courts. Read this full story at wdeanshook.com. The rest of this is absolutely shocking. You'll want to see that. And there's a report that President Obama threatened to shoot down Israeli jets. It says that Obama thwarted an Israeli military attack against Iran's nuclear facility in 2014 by threatening to shoot down Israeli jets before they could reach their targets in Iran. According to a Kuwaiti newspaper cited by the Bethlehem-based news agency Ma'an, in the wake of Obama's reported threat, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was said to be forced to abort the strike on Iran. Israeli news published an account of the report from Al Jared, said the Netanyahu government decided to attack Iran sometime in 2014, soon after the Israelis had discovered the United States and Iran had been involved in secret talks over Iran's nuclear program and were about to sign an agreement in that regard behind Israel's back. The report claimed an unnamed Israeli minister who has good ties with the Obama administration, who disclosed the details to the attack plan to John Kerry, and that Obama then threatened to shoot down their jets before they could reach their targets in Iran. That must come from Mr. Obama's Christian roots and love of Israel, huh? Well, and I want to report the government is hiding the real numbers about vaccination suppression. The The WhiteHouse.gov petition calling the prohibition of laws requiring mandatory vaccines was throttled by the White House, buried from public view, and finally frozen for more than 36 hours to prevent it from achieving 100,000 signatures, according to naturalnews.com, who broke the story. Forced and mandatory vaccinations have been a topic of hot debate in the last few months. The petition, titled Prohibit Any Laws Mandating the Force and Requirement of Vaccinations of Any Kind, it was posted February 4th. It was rapidly heading toward the minimum 100,000 required signatures needed to trigger a response from the White House. But on February 27th, it was frozen at 56,791 signatures, where it remained for more than 36 hours. Now, the petition still allows people to sign it, writes Natural News, and it sends a confirmation email that claims your signature counts, but the number on the petition website never change, no matter how many people sign it. Dr. Rima Libbo on the Natural Solutions Foundation noted the petition was throttled by the White House even before it froze. While monitoring the petition's numbers several days ago, he noted it would only allow a maximum of 100 signatures per hour. In addition to first throttling and then freezing signatures, the White House is deliberately burying the petition to make sure it can't be easily found by the public without the precise web address. Unlike other petitions, which are easily found at petitions.whitehouse.gov. Now, this petition opposing vaccines mandates was deliberately hidden from view and could only be accessed if someone knew the direct URL. Now, on YouTube, this is equivalent to setting a video to unlisted status to prevent the public from finding it. I have this precise website address, and I'm going to post it on my website after the program today. So if you want to sign this petition, I have the direct address. It'll be posted on the front page of the website later today, wdeanshook.com. And here's something I'll bet you didn't know. Private police carry guns and make arrests, and their ranks are swelling. According to Center Times Daily, Michael Yolen stopped a driver in Manassas, Virginia, and wrote the man a ticket for driving on a suspended license. With a badge on his chest, a gun on his hip, Yolen gave the driver a stern warning to stay off the road. The stop was routine police work, except for one fact. Yolen is not a Manassas officer. The citation came courtesy of the private force he created that until recently he called Manassas Junction Police Department. He is the chief and the sole officer. He is a force of one, and he's not alone. Like more and more Virginians, Yolen gained his police powers using a little-known provision of state law that allows private citizens to petition the courts for the authority to carry a gun, display a badge, and make arrests. The number of these special conservators of the peace, or SCOPS, as they're known, has doubled in Virginia over the past decade, roughly to 750 according to state records. The conservator of the peace concept predates modern policing. In its origins in English common law and in First Virginia statute, was enacted in 1860 to allow proprietors of watering places to protect their establishment. The designation still retains some of that informality. No authority regulates the conduct of SCOPS or addresses complaints against them. Although a court can revoke their commissions, the state does not track the number of arrests they make or citations they issue. Most SCOPs patrol campuses or perform code enforcement for counties and cities, but Yolen has pushed the model further by creating his own department and turning policing into an enterprise. He contracts his services to 9 apartment and housing communities in the Manassas area. That's up from one in 2012. Scopes are free to call themselves police in Virginia, although the new bill would require court approval. Yolen recently dropped police department from the name of his operation, anticipating that lawmakers would restrict use of the term. It's now called Manassas Junction LLC. As law enforcement and laws seem to be getting more out of hand, Obama unveils a national ObamaLaw Plan, according to the Daily Caller. President Barack Obama today introduced his plan for a progressive takeover of state and local policing. said we have a great opportunity to really transform how we think about community law enforcement relations, he said Monday. We need to seize the opportunity. This is something I'm going to stay focused on in the months to come, Obama said. Obama also instructed his media allies to help a federalization of policing and to sideline critics of centralized policing rules. He said, I expect our friends in the media to really focus on what's in this report and pay attention to it. Obama's using the crisis sparked by the August 2014 shooting of Michael Brown, who was killed after assaulting a shopkeeper and a policeman in Ferguson, Missouri. Obama and his deputies stoked the subsequent controversy in the run-up to 2014 election in the hope of boosting African-American turnout. The mobilization effort failed, partly because local law enforcement officials released a video showing Brown's strong-arm robbery of that store shortly before his fatal shooting. Now Obama is trying to expand progressive control by attaching more conditions to federal funding of state and local law enforcement efforts. He said we can expand the federally funded COPS program to see if we can get more incentives for local communities to apply for the best practices and lessons that are embodied in this report. Those best practices likely will eventually include rules that restrict police investigation of groups that are part of the Democratic coalition, and rules that try to level convictions and penalties among various subgroups of the United States, regardless of actual conviction rates. He said, I think communities across the board are going to need to consider recommendations around prohibiting racially profiling. That's a step that we've already taken in the federal level, Obama said. The report also calls for government to collect more data about state and local policing. The data will help federal officials impose new rules. We need more information to find out how to scale best practices when it comes to training of the police officers. State and local policing may need to subordinate to federal social policy, Obama suggested, our approach to our drug laws, for example, and criminalization of nonviolent offenses rather than taking more of a public health approach. That may be something that has an impact in eroding trust between law enforcement and communities. So basically, this is the federalization of law enforcement. And I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we're going to talk about more executive orders. And unfortunately, the Democrats are now learning how net neutrality is going to affect them. And in the middle of our nuke agreement with Iran, they're vowing to raise the flag of Islam over the White House. These stories and more when we come right back after this break. You are listening to End Time News.
Do you think the media is biased? Maybe they're leaving something out, or there's something they're not telling you. Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
GoDaddy offers everything you need to make a name for yourself on the web, from domain names and website builders to complete e-commerce solutions. We've earned our place as the world's #1 accredited domain registrar by delivering world-class products at competitive prices and support them with industry-best services delivered 24/7, 365. We're proud to serve our customers from locations around the world. Sign up now at wdeanshook.com and get your domain name as low as $5.99 a year. Sign up now at wdeanshook.com. Go, Daddy. Go, Daddy.
We are living in unprecedented times. Constant wars worldwide. Nation against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. They're genetically modifying our food. Increased violence as the heart of man grows cold. Ever increasingly tyrannical governments around the world. Stay connected. End Time Prophecy News with W. Dean Shook. Your connection to the signs of the times.
Hi, folks. Have you noticed the federal government and police departments are using drones for everything? Drones are expensive. They're hard to fly. It can take up to a week just to learn to make a drone hover. Not anymore. There's a new generation of drones that are not only affordable, but very easy to fly. Now, you can have your own personal drone, anything from a micro mini that'll fit in the palm of your hand, right up to a full-scale model, 10 inches in diameter like the model I have, the V949 Pro. Comes with a 6-axis, 4-rotor blade and an HD 2.4 camera mounted on the bottom. These drones are made of a space-age polymer. They're durable. And don't worry about crashing your drone. Replacement blades for this drone from the website are only $1.80 for a pack of 4. That's right, I said $1.80 for a pack of 4 replacement blades. You can also get an extra long life battery. This battery allows you up to a half hour of flight time with a maximum speed of 40 miles an hour. Have your own personal drone, and you can get all of this for under $70. If you go to the website, wdeanshook.com, and click on the banner on the webpage, you can get from 7 to 22% off your personal drone. It's shipped as a kit. You can be up and flying your own personal drone with an HD camera within a half hour. Come to the webpage, wdeanshook.com. Click on that banner and get your discount today. wdeanshook.com.
As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately.
Tell us,
they said,
when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?
You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. For then there will be great distress, unequal from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equal again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. When you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come.
And thank you very much for that break. I appreciate it very much. And I assume that everybody knew that President Obama would use executive action to achieve his goals for the rest of his presidency, since Congress is not going to go along with his shenanigans. It's now reporting by Town Hall that Obama is very interested in raising taxes through executive action. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest confirmed Monday President Obama is very interested in the idea. President clearly has not indicated any resistance in using executive authority to try and advance an agenda that benefits middle-class Americans, Ernst said. He said this in response to a question by Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont, calling on Obama to raise more than $100 billion in taxes through IRS executive actions. He said Obama's preferred action would be for Congress to pass a corporate tax hike that would fund liberal infrastructure projects like mass transit. But if Congress fails to do as Obama wants, just as Congress has failed to pass the immigration reform in the beginning, Obama could take executive unilateral action instead. This past November, for example, he gave work permits, Social Security numbers, and driver's licenses to approximately 4 million immigrants. Those actions, according to the Congressional Budget Office, would raise federal deficit by $8.8 billion over the next 10 years. And liberals also got another surprise, according to WND, about net neutrality. It seems liberals and progressives supporting the Federal Communications 3-2 approval for net neutrality. that the U.S. government's game plan for an open and fair internet atmosphere now suddenly finds themselves on the other side of the fence. They are upset by learning, hey, this deal is not so advanced after all. In short, net neutrality advocates say they envision an internet world free of discrimination. But what's been unveiled in this just-passed plan is a general conduct rule that critics say will stifle free expression by giving the bureaucratic FCC the right to decide the standards and even the content. What's even more interesting, though, is that many who supported net neutrality just days ago are now finding the rules unacceptable. The Progressive Policy Institute, for instance, said in a statement reported by the Wall Street Journal, there's nothing progressive about the FCC backsliding to common carrier rules dating back to 1930. What's the big objection? A general conduct rule. It applies a case-by-case basis. The FCC says this may lead to years of expensive litigation to determine the meaning of harm. The Electronic Frontier Foundation wrote, the FCC also warned, those who do object to the FCC rulings of harm for internet use and access better be prepared for a costly legal battle. According to the new rules, if any content inflicts harm on other people, they have the right to regulate that content. The question is, what do they consider harm? When Google chief Eric Schmidt contacted the White House to object to the regulation, he was largely ignored. The Wall Street Journal reported he was distressed to learn that net neutrality idea he thought he had campaigned for had actually been passed in a form that would micromanage the internet and its content. Goodbye, free speech. And I've got a story from the Jerusalem Post that says here's a reason for more than the president to be involved in any deal with Iran. A senior Iranian cleric with close ties to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini vowed on Friday that we will raise the flag of Islam over the White House. He said this in response to the killing of Hezbollah and Revolutionary Guards operating in the Golan Heights last month. According to foreign media, Israeli attack helicopters killed 6 Hezbollah terrorists along with 6 Iranian Revolutionary Guards, including a high-ranking general. Among the Hezbollah operatives killed in the strike was Jihad Moinier, the son of Hezbollah's former military leader. This, who, according to Western intelligence sources, was in the midst of setting up a terrorist base in the Golan Heights, plotting rocket attacks, bombings, anti-tank missile strikes, and cross-border infiltrations against Israel. The cleric Ali Shariz made the remarks on the official Revolutionary Guard website. His comments were reported by the Saudi-owned news network Al Arabiya. The resistance front, led by Iran, would retaliate for the global arrogance of killing Iranian officers and Hezbollah men on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. The cleric added that Iran continues to make its presence felt in a number of areas throughout the region, including Yemen, where a sect affiliated with Shiite Islam has overthrown a ruling government and then taken power. The Islamic Republic directly supports the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon as Shiite militants in Syria and Iraq, he said. Obviously, they can be trusted during negotiations for their nuclear program. And Breitbart is reporting the tears of Pelosi. Tuesday on MSNBC, Andrea Mitchell reported that Mark Regev, Benjamin Netanyahu's spokesman, read aloud House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi's emotional statement following the Prime Minister's address to a joint session of Congress. Andrea Mitchell read the Post statement, I was near tears throughout the Prime Minister's speech, saddened by the insult to the intelligence of the United States, saddened by the knowledge of the threat posed by Iran and border community to preventing nuclear proliferation. Regev replied, I want to say the following. I urge everyone to read the transcripts of the speech. He said this issue should not be a partisan issue. This should unite us, not divide us. The Iranian regime with nuclear weapons is a danger to us all. The Iranians today are building intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Pentagon says so. They're not building those missiles for Israel because they've got missiles that can reach Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They're building those to reach targets well beyond the horizon. Targets like North America. Targets like the United States of America. Now, no one in the history of the world has ever built an ICBM for a conventional warhead. No one puts TNT on an ICBM. And I found this story in Britebart London, which I found rather interesting. There's a Christian school where pupils are being called bigots, and they're closing the school. Education Secretary Nikki Morgan has confirmed that Durham Free School will be forced to close after inspectors accuse the children there of being bigots for not knowing what a Muslim is. Other children at this Christian faith school, the majority of whom are under 12, were asked whether they were lesbians, whether they knew how babies were made, and what they would do if a Muslim came to their school. The Department of Education has confirmed that funding will be withdrawn at the end of March. Durham Free School made headlines in January after pupils at the school were branded bigots after one of the kids made a throwaway remark regarding terrorism when asked whether he knew what a Muslim was. In the report, the inspectors concluded leaders are failing to prepare students for life in modern Britain. Some students hold discriminatory views of other people who have different faiths, values, or beliefs from themselves. But teachers at the school argued that it was being unfairly targeted as a Christian faith school. Patrina Douglas, a parent governor, said, "It feels like the school has been made a scapegoat. Durham is primarily white British, so knowledge of other cultures is not as prevalent. But I don't think the children are bigoted." The free school, which educates 94 pupils aged between 11 and 14, was praised by former Education Secretary Michael Gove when it opened in September of 2013. But since then, it's been verbally attacked in the House of Commons, with Pat Glass, the Labour MP for Northwest Durham, tells his colleagues the school had become a haven for every crap teacher in the Northeast. She has since apologized for her unparliamentary language. John Denning, the school's chair of governors, said the staff were highly skilled individuals who have been frankly slandered in the House of Parliament under the protection of parliamentary privilege, calling little kids bigots. Of course, there's another mystery virus. It's called the bourbon virus. This according to the Digital Journal. A new tick-borne virus has been discovered in the U.S. called bourbon virus, according to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Bourbon virus may have killed a previously healthy man in Kansas last year. The virus is named after the county in eastern Kansas where a patient infected with the strain died in late September of 2014. Thocotovirus are known to be spread by ticks and mosquitoes in parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. The patient, a man over the age of 50, suffered multiple tick bites prior to developing a fever, fatigue, aches, nausea, vomiting, and a low white blood cell and platelet counts. Researchers for the Center of Disease Control Prevention at the University of Kansas and the Kansas Department of Health and Environmental examined the patient's blood and found an unidentified virus. The scientists then used advanced molecular detection to sequence the viral genome, confirming that it was a previously unknown pathogen. At this time, the only known prevention strategy for limiting bourbon virus is to avoid tick bites. There's currently no treatment. However, it should be noted that the incident rate of this disease is very, very low. And I want to remind everybody you can email me at contact@wdeanshook.com. You can see all of these stories posted at the webpage. That's wdeanshook.com. Twitter is wdeanshook. Facebook is wdeanshook. And as usual, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, I'll be back with more truth in the news. Thank you.
End Time Prophecy News is the only program on the air that runs on recycled chickweed ethanol, working to save the planet every day.
You can get these full stories and more at wdeanshook.com. That's wdeanshook.com.